This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Alrighty, and we are live here today. The Mile High Insiders, give it a second to breathe. Everybody is champ on the podcast today. I see Robert Caslow already coming in here, James Campbell, Charlie Beagle. Good to see you guys. Hello, Broncos country. It's time for an episode of Mile High Insiders. I'm Nick Kendell, along, once again, episode number 2 with Luke Patterson. Luke, how are you doing?
Man, I'm terrific. We're going to talk Broncos Saturday night with Broncos country. 1 hour, 6p to 7p. We've got a show that's just full of Broncos material. We got some Champ Bailey to talk about, some Von Miller to talk about. Monumental day for the Broncos today. We got to get to everything, Nick, so I'm pumped, man. Can't wait to wrap some Broncos on Saturday night.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I don't want to minimize everything going on in everybody's individual worlds as well as cosmically right now, but it's good to have you on here to talk a little bit of football. And thank you, listeners, for joining us today. Make sure you guys are following Luke on Twitter at Luke Patterson LP. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick Kendell MHH. Subscribe to our show wherever you listen to these shows and leave us a rating, comment. We read those. We take those to heart. Those mean a lot to us. Subscribe to us on YouTube. We just passed 7,000 just last week. We're trying to get to 10,000 by the season kicking off. So, I mean, that would be fantastic. And obviously we can't get there without you guys. Don't miss out on our great off-season content at milehighhuddle.com, of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. And know that this podcast is powered by Overtime Media.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
So today's topic, kicking off, probably one of the more unheralded topics, in my opinion. At least I felt like that way heading out of the draft. Now it seems like a lot of people are starting to catch up, I guess, so to speak. But that is the concerns with the Broncos at the cornerback position. Obviously made some moves this season. Chris Harris Jr. Now with the Chargers. They brought in Bouye for a 5th-round pick. Man, what a steal that was. Drafting Michael Ojemudia, Bryce Callahan coming back, and then just a plethora of names after that. But probably one of the best cornerbacks that I've ever laid eyes on. And first ballot Hall of Famer Champ Bailey joined the fan this week to discuss the Broncos cornerback room, the addition of Bouye, a guy like Michael Ojemudia coming in, what he needs to do. And obviously when Champ talks, people should listen because he is one of the best.
Yeah, absolutely. And what Champ is effectively saying and what he told Cecil and Nick was Ojemudia needs to get underneath now I'm jacking everything up. We've got Ojemudia, Michael Ojemudia from Iowa. Ojemudia. And then we've got Bouye. So tongue twister there. But he basically said Ojemudia needs to get with Bouye and just be underneath this young man's wing. It's that simple. He needs to gravitate towards this veteran because this rookie, he's going to take some lumps. You're going to get beat. And when I sat back and I started to think about that, I'm thinking, yeah, I think everybody would say that as a veteran corner, you're going to get beat. But when you're saying attach yourself to this veteran player, young guy, that means a lot. Because right now, this is a monumental time, Nick, in our world and in the NFL. And this is a time where there is no rookie minicamp. There are no OTAs. So simply joining a collection of Broncos for the first time that we've seen them actually happen today in the streets of Denver. But outside of that, there hasn't been any football for this young man. This young man has yet to practice with Vic Fangio and Ed Donatel. He has yet to get on the field as a Bronco, and that's gonna face a ton of challenges in the future.
That's definitely a good point. And Bill calls me out here. You're right. It was a 4th, not a 5th. It was the Broncos' 2nd, 4th. I believe it was the one that got in the Emmanuel Sanders trade to the 49ers. I could be mistaken there off the top of my head. But obviously, Ojemudia, he's going to have some ups and downs his rookie season, as Champ Bailey talked about. One thing, again, being somebody who watches a fair amount of Iowa Hawkeye football, Ojemudia, doesn't ever make the most splashy plays. He was never a guy that got the most hype, actually, really until we saw him at the Senior Bowl and really start to hang. One of the few guys that actually was able to match up with Denzel Mims down there. But Ojemudia, one thing that he was really good at, and you're talking about the kind of, I guess, the highs and lows, is that there were not many lows for Ojemudia. He just did not get beat deep. Now, that comes from some of it being Iowa's scheme, keeping everything in front of you. They did not ask a lot of complicated coverages from him. Just if you can come down and make a play, that's great, but do not get beat over the top. So that's something where there will be ups and downs with Ojemudia, but perhaps there'll be less lows than you'd think for a rookie, just because that style of play that he has, he's not prone to getting beat over the top.
Well, and something, every corner does. The best cornerback does. We've seen Champ Bailey get beat. It wasn't much over the top, but a couple of times, especially around those days, he's getting a little longer in the tooth. But every corner is going to get beat. Somebody's going to make a play. It's the NFL, for goodness sake. But for me, after talking to you during the draft, trying to learn about this cornerback a little bit, it seems like Michael Ojemudia is a tackling machine. Vic Fangio likes fundamentals. And one thing that he cannot stand is tackles missed. Now, when I was out there at training camp last year, one of the first things that he had all defensive players doing were tackling the bags, starting from the hips. You're down on your knees, and it's just like you did in Pee Wee football. It was one of the crazier things I'd seen, thinking this is the NFL, professional football, and he is going back to basics, literally fundamentals of tackling and wrapping up. And that's ultimately what's going to win defenses games. I mean, when you think about that, missed tackles happen in the NFL and they consequently lose the game. So I think he's got a lot riding for him there. I would also be curious to look at his Wonderlic score, because everything I hear about the young guy is that he's extremely, extremely intellectual and smart. He's able to pick up new concepts. He's able to hone in on concepts he's familiar with. And I think that, have a vast arsenal of what to know you can expect in the wide receiver route tree, what to know you can expect out of Ed Donatell's defense. I think that's going to serve him a lot in the long run with Vic Fangio.
Yeah, and something that's interesting about the Broncos defense is that I believe last year they finished with the second lowest average depth of target surrendered by a defense. So what that means to me, I think the Patriots are the only team that had actually a lower average depth of target surrendered. So what does that mean? It means that the Broncos are going to give up some short passes, but keeps everything in front of them. So it's really important for those defenders on the boundary, the safeties, the cornerbacks, the linebackers, to be able to tackle in their one-on-ones, because they're going to be there. They're going to let the pass underneath. They'll let you move the ball, but just not giving up those big plays, not giving up those backbreakers, unless I guess it's Tyreek Hill, which he seems to get a few of those every game. Granted, that's not Broncos specific. So that's something I really think that makes sense with Ojemudia as well. You talked about it. I believe he came to Iowa actually as a linebacker recruit, and then they kind of moved him to safety and then also cornerback. He's very big for a cornerback. And again, at Iowa, the coverages were simple, stupid. Phil Parker, the defensive coordinator, they really did not ask to disguise coverages, a lot going on. Keep it in front of you, play fast, do your job. It'll work out in the end. Bend, don't break. And that's something that so that means that you didn't really get to see Ojemudia as far as press man, his bail technique, just how good his hips were, the click and close. You didn't really get to see it as much just because the coverages were so simple and continuous. So there are questions with Ojemudia. Again, the Senior Bowl, they played more press man. He was able to do well. You saw the length. You saw the athleticism. So that's a big indicator. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays. I'm really excited about the upside, but there are questions about how much he can translate just because the Iowa tape was so simple as far as the coverages he was asked to play.
Well, and think about Champ Bailey. I consider Champ Bailey the best cornerback of all time. And the reason, because he was a tackling machine also. Yeah. Champ was never afraid to stick his nose in there, but he did it in a smart way. Champ, how many tackles did Champ Bailey, and I can remember it vividly in my mind, where you see him diving at the legs of players, wrapping up, twisting, and taking them down. No matter the size, it didn't matter if it was a running back or even an old school fullback in those days. Champ had that perimeter locked down. And that wasn't only in the passing game, it was in the running game also. So to hear Champ Bailey giving some praise to the Rook feels really good, but it's also important to know that the Hall of Famer is telling him he's going to take his lumps. Champ had to take his lumps his rookie year, and you know what? It's just going to happen. You need to expect that, but attach yourself to the veterans who will show you ultimately how to get you through it. And I think having a strong defensive backfield with Kareem Jackson and Justin Simmons is going to help this secondary unit. Bryce Callahan. What do you say about Bryce Callahan? I mean, the guy has never completed an NFL football season. That's about it for me. So huge concern there because, one, we can't even get him on the field. Now, I don't even know if we'll ever see him in a Broncos uniform. So that's a hard one to rely on for me. Then you got to look at Isaac Yiadom. I'm looking in the comments right now. It seems like a lot of people are curious about Yiadom. A lot of people have given up on Yiadom, but this has to be it for him in training camp. If he does not compete and find a way to make it over Duke Dawson or another cornerback, a Devontae Bosby, something like that, then he's gone, plain and simple. So as you look at the cornerback depth, you realize that there is a significant value with this pick. And I think Vic Fangio, Ed Donatel, and John Elway all expect this young kid to come in and compete for a starting role immediately.
Yeah, I will say for Yadam, one thing that he does have going for him, a little bit like Ojemudia, which is actually there's some concerns there, some combination or I guess some comparisons between the two, where Yadam is a solid tackler. So at worst, you're going to get some special teams value from him. I remember watching him at Boston College, and the special teams was a selling point for that third-round comp pick. So maybe there's some safety ability. I just don't see the hips, the quick twitch ability to play that boundary cornerback so much. So we'll see this year, but that's a good point. Obviously, want to get to our comment section here as well. Gary Palmer, 719 coming in. Love it. Nick and Luke, what could be better than that? Thank you very much. Also,
thanks, Gary.
Some good Robert Caslow coming in, as always. Who are some Broncos UDFAs? Obviously, there's Asang Bassi, who came from Wake Forest. It's a slot guy. Some people thought he was going to be drafted, struggled a little bit at the Senior Bowl. Smaller guy, 5'10", 185, I believe. That's just off the top of my head. And then also, I guess that's the main. Do you have any thoughts on Asang Bassi? Did you watch him so much? I know that it's a little bit lower down in the draft here. But
yeah, I don't – I didn't look at him too much. Looking at the undrafted corners right now, trying to pull some up and trying to look at free agents that are available also. And I think you and I touched on this maybe off air, but is Dre Kirkpatrick still available on the open cornerback market?
I believe so. I think we know that Prince Amukamara signed. I believe Eli Apple just signed this past week as well. So there's two cornerbacks off the market. Marquez Dennard from Cincinnati and Dre Kirkpatrick, both former Cincinnati Bengals first-round picks at cornerback, I believe, are still free agents.
Yeah, so I think those could be, some potential players that maybe you see in camp come in if somebody goes down, if somebody's cut immediately. We see those things happen all the time where a vet will suddenly come in and a player's suddenly gone in the overnight. And it's bizarre because numbers are changed. And when you're out there, you think you know who these players are. They don't have the last names on their jerseys. You're trying to remember certain numbers, and then it's actually somebody else. And the Broncos have done that quite a bit, especially at the tight end position last year with Buck Howard and some of those things too. So something to look out for the cornerback position. But another thing Champ Bailey said when talking about the significance of A.J. Bouye is that A.J. Bouye, he's seen it and he's done it. And he's done it in places that aren't as respected as the Denver Broncos. That's something that Champ Bailey was stressing on, immensely with Cecil and Nick Ferguson, his former teammate with the Denver Broncos. And when he joined the guys with the fan, he said coming from Washington into Denver, he knew immediately he was coming to a well-respected franchise that was always going to be in that topper echelon. He also included the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Baltimore Ravens, saying they're always right there. And I knew that the Denver Broncos, they were always going to be right there too. So when you think about A.J. Bouye and coming to a new team, this is, I believe, his third team after Houston and Jacksonville. What do you think A.J. Bouye's mindset is coming as a Denver Bronco after already playing for two franchise teams?
Well, I'm sure he's excited to come in and play for this defense, which has turned around the careers of, Fuller with the Bears, went from a potential first-round bust pick to arguably one of the better cornerbacks in the NFL. Prince Amukamara struggled with the Giants, went to the Bears, was okay one year with the Jags, I believe, and then went to the Bears and went really well. So I think it's a good shot for Bouye. Honestly, my biggest thing I hope he's thinking about is staying healthy. What can I do to stay on the field? Because Bouye, there's every single year he misses 2 to 4 games. With hamstring issues, different things there. So staying healthy, getting on the field as much as possible, because while the Broncos do have depth at cornerback, we don't know if it's quality depth because there's just so many unknowns there. So that's probably my biggest thing for him. But like Champ Bailey said, the culture in the Denver Broncos locker room, the history, this is an organization that expects to win despite what we've seen the last 3 seasons. There is still, obviously Peyton Manning casts a shadow there, but it's Pat Bowlen still. His legacy lives on. The Broncos are a hated team by many fans because of how good they've been. So coming in, knowing that expectation, knowing that this is a championship organization, especially coming from the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think that is a big boost for A.J. Bouye as long as he can stay healthy.
Yeah, well, and it's something else that, Cecil Lammy brought up on Sports Radio 104.3 The Fan with that interview with Nick Ferguson and Champ Bailey. He doesn't have to break up fights in training camp here. He's not going to have to be babysitting Jalen Ramsey. He's not going to have to watch the disaster that was the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, it seems like it's a revolving door of drama with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I know the Broncos are struggling to find an identity and they're putting one together. But when you truly think of teams that don't have identities, and you're looking at the Houston Texans right now, and it's like, holy cow, what are you guys doing? And the Jacksonville Jaguars, who were in the running to get to the Super Bowl less than 2 years ago. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy to think that he couldn't be excited to be coming into the Mile High City. He's got beautiful facilities to work out in. He's got the best training staff, the best coaches that John Elway could give him. I mean, he's given him Ed Donatel and Vic Fangio. And for those of you that don't know about Ed Donatel, I believe this is his second or third stint with Denver. He's been in the Denver Broncos organization before. He's respected and loved him so much he came back and put a lot of weight into that. Yes, he's good friends with Vic Fangio, who also tried to get A.J. Bouye when he was thinking about signing after that Houston Texans contract expired. Vic Fangio wanted him as a Chicago Bear, was very close to getting him. The Bears just weren't willing to pay the money, and that's ultimately why Bouye went to the Jags. So you know that the head coach wants you. You know that John Elway wants you. And you know that Broncos country wants you because they're looking for a huge hole to replace Chris Harris Jr. Not the same player, but something Champ Bailey also talked about with Chris Harris Jr. when the fellas asked him, you know, what can you tell us about a young CHJ? And one of the first things Champ Bailey said, the dude was a grinder. I noticed it immediately in training camp. This kid was one of the hardest workers I had ever seen, and that immediately gained the respect of Champ Bailey. So if this young rook can come in and truly attach himself to the veteran leadership on this Broncos secondary, I think we're in for a really good rookie season.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Yeah, the Broncos, they're taking a shotgun approach to cornerback this year. There's no doubt about it. Bryce Callahan's injuries, what are we going to see from him? Will we see him? A.J. Bouye, his best play has been as a number 2 cornerback outside of that really good last season at the Texans. Obviously, having Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, I think it was a 2017 season was the Pro Bowl season for Bouye, and I completely agree with you. Nick, maybe you could explain a little bit the difference between Chris Harris Jr. as a man-to-man slot corner, and I know he did play outside and some zone coverage for some of Broncos country right now. Tell us why A.J. Bouye will fit into the Vic Fangio zone defense.
Well, communication and tackling is obviously very important. Bouye's tackling was a little bit down last year, but he was dinged up. He did have an injury, and just the versatility that he brings, the off coverage, obviously they play match quarters, a lot of split field reads, and that is important for this defense. Chris Harris Jr., he's much more of that, able to get on a guy's hip, stick in there, move inside and outside. Not the typical press man you see with the length, but really good, really quick at sticking in a guy's hip. Bouye, a little bit more off coverage that you'll see there with the ability to press. With Chris Harris, though, the biggest thing with him was the ability to go inside and outside really seamlessly from slot to boundary. Bouye, you're probably not going to see as much ability from the slot. You're going to see him need to use that sideline as a defender a little bit more, but I think it's a great fit. The biggest question for me is he going to be – he's going to have to play like a cornerback 1 in this offense or in this defense with the contract he has, especially with no dead money next year also, which is an interesting tidbit to hold over him. And his best work has been in as a cornerback too. I mean, say what you will about Jalen Ramsey's attitude. Dude is one of the best 5 cornerbacks in football, true press man, boundary cornerback 1. So Bouye coming in here, having to come in and be the guy at cornerback, that is something to watch. That is at least, I guess I wouldn't say concerning, but it's worth mentioning and paying attention to this season.
Yeah, completely agreed. So I'm going to put you on the spot right now, Nick, because we know that the Las Vegas Raiders drafted a wide receiver, the wrong one, because the Denver Broncos ultimately got the best wide receiver in this draft, Alabama Jerry Jeudy. Now, the Las Vegas Raiders opted to take Henry Ruggs, his teammate. So I'm going to put you on the spot right now with the current cornerbacks that the Denver Broncos have. You are the defensive coordinator. You know the speed demon in Henry Ruggs is going to be lined up in the slot. Which Broncos cornerback are you going to put on him?
It's a trick question because this defense is much less man-on-man, leaving a guy on an island. So it's going to take a group effort with that back defensive. So cornerbacks are rarely in one-on-one situations in this defense because the safeties, how they use those guys. So I think that you probably will see A.J. Bouye on him, I think. Okay. But it depends on where he's going to be. I mean, if you have Henry Ruggs in the slot, I mean, there are questions about his ability to beat press if he can do that consistently. So if you see Henry Ruggs in the slot more year 1, then it'll be Callahan or potentially whatever they do with that third safety. So It's going to depend on where they use him and where Ruggs best fits. But as far as a truly matching up one-on-one with speed, and I guess shades also to Tyreek Hill, I don't know if the Broncos have that guy. I'd hesitate to say Bryce Callahan, but a lot of it depends on who comes up. I mean, if Ojemudia wins the the boundary sub package cornerback spot, that changes that shuffles the deck. So there's a lot of factors that it comes down to.
Yeah. And I mean, you start thinking cover 2, cover 4. It's the very first thing quarterbacks look for, right? When they come up to the line of scrimmage and they diagnose the defense, what do they look at? They look at the safeties. So yeah, a little bit of a trick question. I wanted to put you on the spot because something I'm definitely curious about. So it looks like we got Kenneth Booker coming in. Thanks for the show, Kenneth, and joining us here. With Fangio having a safety-friendly defense, do you see Jackson moving to cornerback and a draft pick who's picking up the system fast to replace him like Coleman if Callahan can't stay healthy? Well, Kenneth, that's a good question because we certainly know that Kareem Jackson can play cornerback. He has played cornerback, played a lot of corner last year for the Broncos, and he has played it throughout his career in the Houston Texans. But I can tell you from being on the press conferences with Kareem Jackson, he's very excited to be a safety. Now, that's not to say he's not going to do what's asked of him, barring injury, knock on wood. But ultimately, Kareem Jackson, he's your safety. He's got to be your Kelsey killer, so to speak. He's got to diagnose those tight ends for me. Justin Simmons, he's more of your ball hawk. And Kareem Jackson, he's your enforcer in the backfield. He's got to figure out a way to, like Nick was alluding to earlier, stay over the top of those slot wide receivers or check that tight end. Because there's a couple tight ends in this AFC West division with Hunter Henry and Travis Kelce. And the Broncos still haven't had an answer for him. So for me right now, I'm leaving Kareem Jackson at safety. What are your thoughts, Nick?
I mean, it depends. Again, it depends on what they're going to use as far as how this all stacks up with the defense. I was trying to pull up the Pro Football Focus data here, but Kareem Jackson last year, he is a safety, but that doesn't mean that he's not going to have cornerback snaps. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he kind of took some of that Will Parks nickelback role. So that's something that they might use him as. You could see some boundary work as well. I mean, the Broncos, especially with Vic Fangio, the lines between safety, cornerback, and nickelback are blurred. You have to wear many different hats, especially as a safety. So that versatility, that obviously intelligence that Kareem Jackson has, that's really key for how Vic Fangio is going to use those safeties. He's going to be listed as a safety, but that doesn't just mean he's going to play the safety spot. It's not as – these defenders are not in boxes as much as you saw on the Wade Phillips defense, so that especially in coverage. So – moving him to cornerback full-time, I guess it's an option, but that probably is last case scenario. You're only there if injuries strike or potentially maybe one of these other cornerback or safeties, really steps up. I mean, the commenter talked about Douglas Coleman, undrafted free agent from Texas Tech, had a really good season as far as statistical output. Some questions about the athleticism. Trey Marshall's a guy that we saw flashes of last year. The Broncos stashed Elijah Holder on the practice squad. I've heard that there's some rumblings about liking him. He played cornerback at Stanford, but now is going to play safety. So there's a lot of options there. And the Broncos, from safety to cornerback outside of Simmons and Kareem Jackson, it's a lot of question marks, but there's just so many names that if just two of those guys step up, that's going to make this roster and can really make that secondary and the defense so much stronger. But just until we see them on the field, it's hard to know who it's going to be.
Yeah, that's just something that's just it. And when you look at Broncos history, we do know that the Denver Broncos will have a player on the 2020 active roster that was undrafted. This has been a tradition, I feel like 15 plus years in the making, maybe even closer to 20 now. It always happens, and you never quite know when it's going to start at the beginning of the training camp, but you definitely know by the third preseason game because the players that come out, they compete in training camp, they show that they have their flaws and they have their mistakes, but they can respond to coaching and they respond to criticism well, and then they implement said coaching in the game. Those meaningless preseason games, those matter a ton for guys in the NFL. I know it's really bad optics, especially if you're an NFL fan, but Nick, you watch the game multiple times. I watch the game multiple times. We chart plays constantly. We look for tendencies. That's how you start to figure out what teams are doing, and you could start to build the puzzle immediately in training camp. So cornerback could definitely be one of those positions where an undrafted rookie comes in and makes the team. Yeah,
and just to circle back there to the Kareem Jackson stats, while he is listed as a free safety, that's where a bulk of his snaps are going to come. Last season, here's the numbers of the snaps he had per position. At free safety, so one of those deep two safety spots, 416 snaps out of 842. So 416, about half the snaps, but he had 194 snaps as the slot cornerback and 220 in the box. So more of a dime backer. So you're going to have a lot of different hats. You're going to have to play every single position, especially at safety. So it's something the Broncos can do, but Kareem Jackson, he just looks so natural at safety. I think it's his best position because he doesn't have the juice that he used to have on the boundary, just a step slow, but he's smarter than he used to be. So that's something you see with some of those secondary guys. I mean, Charles Woodson's a classic example. Great cornerback for a long time, extends his career by 10 years by moving to the safety position.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people are always – the NFL is looking for the next linebacker safety hybrid, but what the Broncos have in K-Jack is a cornerback safety hybrid. It's a very bizarre type player. It's hard to duplicate. The guy's a monster for me, man. I was so impressed with the signing. I didn't know a lot about him coming out of Houston. Was a little hesitant, especially with the ongoing Chris Harris Jr. disputes and paying some corner that the Broncos have never had to come in /safety. And boy, did he rectify everything. But with Justin Simmons, the Broncos are looking at having two of the highest paid safeties in the NFL. So something that they're going to have to figure out. But the defensive secondary unit, man, it's going to be real nasty in training camp because I think there's going to be a ton of competition. You're going to see Drew Lock out there throwing against guys, exposing some guys. Let's just be real with it. You're going to see Cortland Sutton just straight moshing some of these rookies. You're going to see, KJ Hamler, the speed demon. You're going to see him get caught a couple of times also. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the competition between this young DB room with, a little bit of depth and a very young wide receiver core with a ton of talent, but not a lot of NFL experience just yet.
You're absolutely correct. And I also want to say hi to the chat to some guys. Ernie Mays, good to see you again. Denver Broncos are the greatest team ever. Can't say I disagree. Charlie Beagle, also always a friend in here. James Campbell. James is the guy. Want a beast, obviously, in here. And Kenneth, thank you for the question as well. Darian always got to call me on my Iowa bias. Things you can mention on Nick mentioning the Hawks and the Raiders choking. So that's very true. So I guess talking about the secondary here, is there anybody that is a true dark horse for you? I mean, obviously we talked about, a guy like Trey Marshall, maybe there's Douglas Coleman. Is there a cornerback for you? Somebody that we're not talking about right now that you're going to stake the claim on saying, you know what, this guy, don't forget about him.
Man, I want to see more out of Duke Dawson. I thought, especially coming from the Patriots, and maybe that's because he came from the Patriots, that he would be a little bit more involved than he was last year. Something that was very underwhelming for me. I'm not sure. I think he's one of those players that's going to be on the bubble, quite frankly. He's going to be competing. It's going to be Duke Dawson, Isaac Yiadom, really, and Bryce Callahan. We've brought him up. I don't want to just beat on a dead horse, so to speak, but that's just something that I'm not really seeing a lot of. I'm forgetting the Broncos' first name, last name Harris, cornerback. Devontae Harris. I really liked Devontae Harris towards the end of the season last year. I thought he had a really good game against the Oakland Raiders last year, the Las Vegas Raiders this year. So I really liked him there. I think there's some potential there. I can tell you the Broncos like him. He's an extremely athletic guy, very outspoken on Twitter, seems to be about the right things, and he was all about pass deflections. He doesn't necessarily have the best coverage skills, but Vic Fangio's under some pressure and Ed Donatell's under some pressure because what are they known for? Well, we know Vic Fangio knows linebackers, and we know Ed Donatell loves cornerbacks, and he knows them and they train them well. But disguising defenses is something that they did not do very well last year for the Denver Broncos. Now they have a couple more pieces in place. You've got a defensive line that should be downright nasty, getting in the backfield and caving in runs. So I'm really curious to see how Coach responds to the pressure and how he ultimately puts these players in positions where they can be successful.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Yeah, that's a great point. And James actually here takes my guy. We haven't even talked about him yet, I don't think, on here really. But Devontae Bosby had a very small sample size last year before getting injured, was really good for the AAF, and then the Broncos signed him and brought him in. Fangio kind of hounded on him a little bit in preseason, talking about how, he's not really up to the conditioning that he expected. And then Bosby, he got a chance the week 4 against the Packers, showed very well. Week 5, saw some flashes and then suffered that injury. But Ojemudia versus Bosby on the outside, as James mentioned here, I think that's a really interesting battle. And then it's depends on what happens with Callahan being kicked inside. But as far as the 5 defensive back sets, I think that's probably the direction I would be looking right now. As far as the ideal makeup of the Broncos secondary, it'd be Callahan in the slot, Bouye on one side, and then it's either going to be Ojemudia / Bosby on the other. But that third cornerback spot is probably one of the biggest spots of contention on this entire roster going into next year.
Yeah, that's a good one with Devontae Bosby. Absolutely. How can you forget him? I mean, the guy, he brings some height to his game, and he's not a terribly small player either. I think he's around 6'2". Probably close to 200 pounds. I would love to see him put a little bit more muscle on, but last year I think he had 5 games played for the Broncos. So a bit of a dark horse, I think you could say, but the Broncos like him too. Again, another athletic guy. He's able to use his footwork, I think, to set him apart a little bit different than other players. I do like the way he can swing those hips, just like Chubbs and Happy Gilmore. It's all in the hips, baby. It's all in the hips. And when you start thinking about that cornerback, man, that's something I started thinking before the show. And I played O-line and D-line in high school and always thought and swore our positions were, the most difficult positions ever. But Nick, as I thought about it before the show kicked off, could you imagine being a cornerback in the NFL, having to run backwards with some of these guys, having to run backwards against Julio Jones, now a Henry Ruggs speed demon. Some of these players, man, I'm thinking cornerback, I've seriously gained a new respect for him watching all this new film, especially from this rookie, and trying to figure out how good the wide receivers are in the AFC West. And I think it's something where you're going to see wide receivers beat cornerbacks, including Denver Bronco cornerbacks, and sometimes there's nothing you can do. It doesn't necessarily mean that cornerback is absolutely garbage. It doesn't mean that they're absolutely awful, but you're going to have a lot of Pro Bowl wide receivers, maybe even 4 or 5 coming out of the AFC West. If those 4 or 5 are going to be in contention for Pro Bowls, so it's going to be a passing system here in the AFC West, folks, so don't be surprised to see cornerbacks get beat.
Yeah, and also I think it's interesting. I don't know how much you follow I guess it was the debate that was raging last year. 2019, simpler times. But pass rushers versus coverage, and what is actually more important in today's NFL. And typically everyone follow the money. Defensive linemen, pass rushers always get paid, or have historically been paid much higher than cornerbacks. But there is some data out there, I guess, going against that logic, saying that actually, as far as great defenses go, it's more important to have great coverage rather than great pass rushers. And I don't think we'll see that right away, but there's going to be some cornerbacks that are going to get paid coming up here in the next few seasons. You got Marshawn Lattimore going to get paid soon. Tre'Davious White is going to get paid soon. Jalen Ramsey is going to get paid soon. Marlon Humphrey is going to get paid soon. Those guys are all in the top 10 right now. So it's something that's going to be interesting to follow here, just as far as the landscape of the entire NFL and how that dictates what direction the Broncos want to go from a dollars and cents perspective. I mean, obviously this isn't building the Broncos, but talking about the best ways to create a roster. Vic Fangio doesn't really rely on those cornerbacks as much as the Wade Phillips defenses, et cetera. The Broncos are going to look to maybe cut a little bit of costs, not emphasizing that cornerback position as much as other teams do as the league, progresses forward.
Yeah, well, and something else to consider, I know it's really early because we haven't even gotten to training camp starting on July 28th, and I'm hoping we can get out there. I'm not sure. They haven't told us yet for the media what's going to be happening, but as soon as I know something, trust me, you guys will all know something because we're all itching to get out there to training camp. So July 28th is supposedly the day, but is October the trading deadline, Nick?
I believe it's the end of October. But with this year, it could change. I mean, you could see it move back.
So my first thinking is John Elway. We know John loves to wheel and deal, and he wheels and deals in the preseason. Hell, he just did it in the free agency, right? Those were some of his biggest free agent moves. Well, they were actually trades. So Jarrell Casey and AJ Bouye. Jarrell Casey coming from the Titans, AJ Bouye, of course, coming from the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I wouldn't be surprised maybe if John Elway starts picking up the phone if he doesn't like what he sees in the preseason. If Vic Fangio doesn't like what he sees out of his cornerbacks in the preseason. What's one thing that the Broncos have a lot of right now, Nick?
Tight ends.
Tight ends. So maybe could you possibly package a tight end for journeyman corner or a young corner that's going to be a little bit of a project? I don't know. But you have a surplus of tight ends sitting in that room. Maybe you package a tight end and a draft pick to go after a corner that you like. Maybe a corner that gets unhappy and wants a new contract getting closer to training camp. We see a lot of sitting out and contract disputes and all of those things. So I wouldn't be surprised to see John Elway would, as his friends know him, make a deal, man. I mean, he is constantly looking at ways to make this team better, and John Elway loves trades.
Yeah, that he does. And also, I mean, we saw that last year with Duke Dawson being brought in. I think the Broncos traded in
the preseason.
Yep. So Duke Dawson, obviously, maybe going to be more of a nickel safety cornerback type. Granted, I listed all the defensive back positions, but more of that nickel safety. And that could be the usage for him. We could see that again. And rarely do we see player-for-player trades, but you could see the Broncos, let's say they trade Hireman for a conditional 7th and then trade their own 7th for a cornerback. You essentially just did a little bit of a circumventing that. You're trading the player for that, but player-for-player trades don't happen that often. So be interesting to see. Pabby is Wade coming in, our fellow Iowan there over in Des Moines. Great to see you. Go Broncos indeed. I love that mug. Are you much of a coffee drinker, Luke?
Yeah, I am. I have to have caffeine. I like coffee in the afternoon a little bit, but it's got to be a fresh pot. I will not reheat an old pot. I just can't do it. I'm better than that for whatever reason. I'm a little bit of a coffee snob there. Very picky. Yeah. So yeah, but I'm going to rag on Chad a little bit here because I've been trying to get one of those really, really cool mugs that Pabby just showed us where you can get on huddleuppod.com. Go ahead and search huddleuppod.com for hats, hoodies. We're going to be having some MHI merch coming out here in the very near future. So yeah, I'm a big coffee drinker. I'm trying to get a care package from Chad, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I just saw Pabby with the mug there. I think our logo would look absolutely fantastic on a coffee mug. I would kill for one of those.
Absolutely.
And also, thank you very much, Terry. Good to see you all the way from Canada. Terry, let us know in the comment section, where are you in Canada? I've just been missing. I'm here in the Midwest. I'm stuck, and I'm really craving some mountains. So if you just lie to me, say you're from Banff or something, that would just make me way too happy.
And Terry, I'm always using that force, man. I'm always using it. Right now, if I could use the force, I would use it to speed up the calendar so we could get to training camp. Just a little bit of levity. This world we've got a lot of things going on in it. And it's a very dark time for the world right now. So I'm very fortunate to talk sports with you, Nick. So if I could use the force, Terry, man, I'm using the force to speed up that calendar because we got to get back to sports. I'm a huge believer that sports unifies people. By no means is sports the most important thing in the world. There are certainly more important things than sports going on right now, but I'm looking forward to getting back to it because this Broncos team is going to be exciting. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be playoff bound, Super Bowl bound, anything. I think it's way too early to go ahead and start making picks until I get to training camp. But, the secondary unit, it's a big question right now, but I do like what I'm hearing from Champ Bailey, especially if he's getting this rookie corner, Michael Ojemudia, to attach himself to A.J. Bouye.
And here's a take. My goodness, I love Atwater and Smith, but K-Jack hits like Ronnie Lott. You know what? More power to you, Ryan Hamilton. That's quite a bar there. It is the off season. We are, you can drink a little bit of the orange stuff today. So that's I'll live with it. That's great. I don't know if he's the biggest hitter, but granted, the game's changed. And I think K-Jack's versatility, the guy who actually I think reminds me the most of K-Jack, somebody a little bit more recent, a former first-round pick, was really important in the Eagles winning the Super Bowl, and that is Malcolm Jenkins. I mean, Malcolm Jenkins was a boundary cornerback from Ohio State and was drafted by the New Orleans Saints. Played boundary cornerback there, did okay. Then he went to the Eagles and became kind of that match-up safety / cornerback, really much a tight end neutralizer for them. And that versatility offers the intelligence, the leadership. I mean, both of them are outspoken, intelligent young men, or I guess probably older than me, but still young guys with some intelligence there. So I think that's the guy who reminds me about it. While he might not hit like Ronnie Lott, the versatility, it's so big. In today's NFL with the, I guess, fluid defenses and coverages in the back end, it's huge. It's so big.
Yeah, well, you know what? That's so funny. That's a really good comment. The first thing that I think about with that, I was just talking about Ronnie Lott to my wife, and she has no interest really in Ronnie Lott or who he was or football or anything like that, unless it's Broncos. But they were replaying, I think it was a playoff or a Super Bowl game with the San Francisco 49ers. And the very first thing I told her when I heard Ronnie Lott's name was, did you know he opted to have his finger amputated at halftime so he could continue to play in the game? And I don't remember which game that was. Part of me wants to say it was a really significant game, like a playoff game, or I don't want to say Super Bowl because then I think we would definitely know that. But Ronnie Lott was the man. He's got to be one of the best safeties of all time. I think Kareem Jackson, he's absolutely the enforcer of that defense, and no question about it. But I think he's a lot more athletic than Ronnie Lott. No disrespect to the Hall of Famer at all.
Game's changed.
Yeah, but it's just as you see football change a little bit, that could also be those big pads those guys used to wear. That's another reason sometimes. Yeah, exactly. They got shoulder pads up to here. I think it's another reason sometimes why we're thinking, oh, right now these players are so much more young and athletic because they've got those tight jerseys and biceps ripping out and everything like that. Well, you know what? If the old school guys had the same thing, maybe we wouldn't be saying that. But definitely a really good comment, Ronnie Lott. I love talking safeties. I'm a sucker for safeties. Absolutely love them, especially when they're mean.
Very much so. James Campbell coming in from across the pond. Early days, but given the body of work in college, the Broncos roster projections, assuming they're both on the board, and declare who would you want for the Broncos to get? Shaun Wade, nickel defensive back, or Patrick Surtain, cornerback 1. Personally, I know this is maybe this is a little bit early for you, Luke, as regards to 2021 draft. I do like Patrick Surtain. Maybe this is going to make me look stupid. I just don't know how fast he is as far as a boundary corner. I think Shaun Wade, he may not be everybody's cup of tea, but I think he's a perfect fit for the Vic Fangio defense. Now, I do want to see if he can hang at the boundary this year. That's going to be a question for him at Ohio State. Granted, he was a nickel this past season and sometimes a little bit stiff. I mean, we saw KJ Hamler cook him. Granted, they were both freshmen at the time, but that's something that sticks out in my mind. But Wade's ability, I actually see him more as a Minkah Fitzpatrick type. I think his best fit is going to be at safety. And with Kareem Jackson's contract, I mean, let's just call it as it is. The Broncos can save a lot of money moving on from Kareem Jackson next year. Who knows what the salary cap is going to be given the NFL's maybe not going to make as much money this year. It could be stagnant. It could get smaller. I mean, that's really a possibility. So I would love Shaun Wade just because I think he's a perfect fit for this defense.
I like Wade also. Absolutely. I haven't dove a ton into the draft just yet for next year. Yeah. I'll start doing that, really hitting that hard around November-ish, trying to get to the regular season. But I like where you're thinking because I love the draft. Nick, you love the draft. We love to get after these players. Ryan Hamilton chiming in. KJack TV is one of the funniest things going, no doubt. He needs to stick to making more episodes. He definitely needs one. He definitely needs one with a lot of Drew Lock. And it's something I would encourage everybody to go look at. KJack TV. I think you could also find it at denverbroncos.com. And actually got to talk to Kareem Jackson a little bit on the press conference. And he told all of us that that's something that actually started in Houston. It's something that I thought he started here with the Broncos. And the Broncos PR department, they're awesome. They love having their players show a personal side to themselves that the fans don't usually get to see. The media, we sort of see it in the locker room at times and things like that. But it's really one of those things where K-Jack gets a microphone in his hands and just works his magic. And there were a few videos last year that absolutely had me dying when Drew Lock is singing. I think Justin Simmons is singing. Von Miller was making fun of Garrett Bowles' outfit. And, it's just all kinds of good stuff. So, yes, I agree with you. KJack TV, we need more KJack TV. I do know that he has been doing virtual KJack TVs with some of his teammates. So, looking forward to getting that back in the locker room.
I'd like to see him, play Quiplash. I'd tune into Twitch to watch them play Quiplash and just clown around with each other.
There you go. Yeah, that works.
So James coming back in. Use the Force Luke. Hashtag Nick's Beer Fund. Hashtag Broncos World. Thank you very much, James. Appreciate you always coming in. And here's something interesting here. I don't think Vennett is a serviceable blocker. Obviously, he was on the backup tight end actually for Jeff Hireman at Ohio State, drafted by the Seattle Seahawks, played under the Steelers. In theory, Vennett, given his size, you'd think would be a solid blocker. It's not always the case from what I saw on film, but I do think that as far as the Broncos tight ends right now, assuming they don't keep Hireman, Vennett probably is more the wide blocker, the guy who's going to be in line most of the time as that de facto sixth offensive lineman. Even though I do agree that his blocking, given his profile, his athletic profile, his size, would be better than it actually is.
Why is Jeff Heuerman on the team? You know, and I'm going to get back to the Vennett question. I really am. But first of all, why is Jeff Heuerman on the team? Why is Jake Butt on the team? Austin Fort last year, University of Wyoming, undrafted kid, saw him at his local pro day. He was running with the 1s and 2s last year before he got hurt in, I believe, the Hall of Fame game against the Atlanta Falcons. So not quite sure what's going on with that tight end room right now. I guess they don't really have a need to release anybody right now. They're okay with what they've got. But no, Vennett, talking to a couple scouts and a couple analysts around the league, they said don't rule out his catching. I know he's a big dude. He looks mean. You would think because you look mean, you can block. That's not always the case. For me, blocking is in the NFL is a want to thing. It's a requirement. And I think any of those athletes, they're all strong. They all have the ability to accept, well, I should say the majority of them have the ability to accept coaching and learn technique. And blocking is simply moving one man's against another man. You're challenging his will. You're moving it against his will, as Mark Schlereth would say. And don't rule Vennett out in the receiving game. I mean, he may not be the strongest blocker, and that's probably true. But you know what? Drew Lock isn't going to need a ton of blockers in this Pat Shurmur spread offense where he's going to be running out of 11 personnel most of the time. So I think it's really good. But a lot of people right now talking about Nick Vennett, you know, kind of lukewarm on the idea. I'm really excited to see this cat in training camp. I think he could be a dark horse in the tight end position room. They've obviously brought him on, so I don't think he's going to get cut. He's going to make the team, but I think he's going to be very impressive, and I think he's there to help Noah Fant, help Albert Ojemudia, Albert Okwuegbunam. Albert Okwuegbunam. Got it. Boom. See? No flashcards, no nothing, Broncos country. I'm on it. Albert Okwuegbunam. So Drew Lock's buddy. But yeah, the tight end room, it's going to be nasty. Guys are going to get cut. Bug Howard got cut right before the April draft. So yeah, unless we could find some sort of value to get rid of some of these tight ends, and don't think that the Broncos aren't looking, folks. Mike Kliss has reported it. Other Broncos reporters have reported it. They were actively shopping Jeff Heuerman during the free agency. So, and up to the draft. And heck, I wouldn't be surprised if they were shopping him in the draft. And nobody wants him. There are no bites there. So teams are waiting for Jeff Heuerman to get cut. I think Jake Butt, sort of the same thing. But ultimately, it's, can you get on the field? And that's something that Bryce Callahan's going to have to answer, something that Juwan James is going to have to answer. And if you're going to be on this team, you better be playing.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with the plethora of the tight ends the Broncos have right now, granted, we saw an injury spurt last year. Bug Howard got hurt. Austin Fort got hurt. Jake Butt got hurt. So, maybe holding on to those guys because right now you're paying them either way, cut or not cut. But also, you could see spots open up over training camp, over preseason, where you could see a team, let's just say the Chargers, because they're always the team that seems like this to happen. Granted, probably not an interdivision trade, but somebody like that has a rash of injuries at the tight end position, just giving up a 7th-round pick, even if it's a conditional, that's better than just outright cutting Jeff Heuerman. So that's something you're playing with house money there. Hold on to him until the last moment, until you're forced to move on from him, just because the landscape could change. Somebody could offer you something. I mean, even if you're, say, sending a Jeff Heuerman in a 7th this year for a 6th-round pick, you're still increasing that value just a little bit. So might seem small at the time, but you should hold on to those guys unless you think that they're, I guess, hampering these snap percentages and snap counts for a guy that you want to see more of, and Andrew Beck and Austin Fort. Then you can kind of have that conversation. But for now, they're not even practicing yet. Hold on to them. There's no reason not to. Yeah, Terry Randall coming in, to Broncos World. That's a pony, an alarm clock, and a lock. So we'll leave it at that. I have no idea what that means. And Northwest Alberta. Good to hear, Terry. That's a good spot.
Terry, you're the man. We can't thank you enough for all of your support here with Mile High Insiders. Part of Sports Illustrated, part of the Maven Coalition, and y'all rock. You're rocking with us. I can't believe, we're 46 minutes in here, and things are rocking and rolling. I'm Luke Patterson. He is Nick Kendell. Be sure to get over to milehighhuddle.com. I want you to check out a ton of great writing. We have so many great writers, both not only in the United States, but over across the pond in the UK as well. Mile High Huddle and Broncos country, we do understand that Broncos country isn't a geographical location. It is a state of being. And we definitely encourage everybody to go ahead and head over to huddleuppod.com. Get some swag. So get some really cool swag. We got MHI swag coming out real soon. But right now, go ahead and give those guys some love. Get a hat, get a hoodie. Masks are big right now, right, Nick? We got to take care of ourselves, protect our community and our country. So be sure to show us some love, guys, and go over and rate this podcast. Tell us what you like about it, what you'd like to hear more of.
And Joe Turner coming in with the off-topic here, but Big Ten. I'm always down to talk college football. It's the only thing that's compared is NFL football, obviously. I know it's off topic. Sorry, but Nick, what's your honest opinion? You think Scott Frost will work at Nebraska? I guess I could go on a while. I'm not the biggest Nebraska fan. Being a Hawkeye, it's probably the team that I dislike the most. I don't know. I'm also wearing a Colorado Buff shirt, so I'm on opposite ends of the spectrum as far as the Nebraska Cornhuskers go. Yep, I think the biggest thing with Scott Frost is, and this could be me being a biased fan, but it doesn't seem like he takes accountability. Where Nebraska has issues, it's the player's fault. It's the other coach's fault. At some point, you're talking about a guy, go out there and take a bullet for your players. I mean, it was a metaphorical bullet, but the media is hammering you. You know what? That's on me. I didn't do that right. And I think the players would respond, but Scott Frost right now, there's no personal accountability. I'm a fan of former President Truman. The buck stops here. I think that's really accountable for every single organization that you want to run, that it starts at the top, and you have to have a guy that's willing to take some responsibility. And I haven't seen that from Frost. So that's my biggest concern. Also, I think another thing that is not, I guess, talked about enough is Scott Frost wanted to run the spread offense. I'm not going to talk too much longer here, but he wanted to run this kind of spread Florida offense where you can get these athletes at University of Central Florida. That's not the case at Nebraska and the Big Ten West. You have to be able to punch with Wisconsin, with Iowa, with Minnesota. These teams are, I know that the spread football and the passing game is all here, but in the Big Ten West, if you're going to hold up, you have to match up in the trenches. That's where it starts. And Nebraska just has not had the guys in the trenches, the offensive line, the defensive line, the depth there. It just hasn't been. Every single time they play Iowa just punches them in the mouth. Over the last, I guess, six games they played, 6 years, Iowa's just beat them in the trenches. So that's my biggest questions. Will Scott Frost work? It's possible. Obviously, they recruit pretty well at Nebraska. But right now, I would say that it's not working the best. No college football. Sorry, Jay Gallant. It is a different game. But, that's how we get our draft takes, right?
Yeah, no, and something, and it's very valid. And something that I think I'd like to add to that, too, is I question a little bit of what's happened to the scouting at the University of Nebraska. I'm making tons of friends out on the road trips for the college football all-star games and things like that, and trying to figure out, where some players are coming from. And you see, I think it was the Davis twins out of the University of Nebraska, right, Nick, that got drafted last year, Carlos Davis and Khalil Davis. So you see them getting drafted. But when you start looking at recruiting and you start looking at geographical locations, and like you said, you got to get some big boys up front, the culture has definitely changed at Nebraska. And they've got a huge following, but I think it's comparable to what's happened at CU. Those glory days, both colleges want to get back to them, but it's really, really hard to do when you don't have a great program that you can truly sell to recruits, specifically in the Midwest. And when you've got players that are getting recruited to the University of Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Texas, and, all the schools in Texas, that's going to be tough. That's going to be really, really tough. So, yeah, we will definitely hone into some more scouting questions and stuff like that as next year's draft gets closer.
I'm already at this point, you want to cast a wide net because who knows which way the Broncos can go. Offensive tackle and cornerback are number 1 and 1A, I guess, right now, if you're talking about positions for the Broncos in the first round, given how valuable they are. But I won't sleep on linebacker. That's a really interesting one. Did you ever go watch Micah Parsons? I know we talked about him a little bit. Have you gotten a chance?
I did. And I was pleasantly surprised.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. A machine. Absolutely a machine. You talk about energy and get off. That was the very first thing I think I wrote down when I saw Parsons. Parsons? That's how you pronounce it, right? Micah Parsons. So energy and get off, that's something that's huge. Something that Alexander Johnson, it reminds me a lot of Alexander Johnson in terms of the quick explosiveness, but what do we know about linebackers with the Broncos, Nick? We know that they can't cover as good as they need to. So that's something that the Broncos have got to figure out. What are these coverage linebackers going to look like? And, I know I called Kareem Jackson your Kelsey killer, but these linebackers, you got to either bump them, you got to knock them off the line of scrimmage, you got to do something. So, yes, I think heading into next year's draft, linebacker, offensive line, corner, those are things that are still going to be relevant, and just a little too early for me to get there now, but I am excited and I can't wait.
It's literally offensive tackle on the offense or any single position on the defense. You can make an argument for me for any single position on the defense just because it depends on the player there. Kareem Jackson, contract is coming up, getting older. Justin Simmons needs to get paid. Pay the man. I don't even care. I've heard enough. Pay him Elway. Like, what an intelligent guy. I want him around with the Broncos. That'll probably be my next jersey. Gosh, what an incredible person.
Yeah, and something on Justin Simmons, man. Justin Simmons, I've gotten to interact with him personally a couple times, and what a gentleman the guy is. The very first time before I even started covering the Broncos was his rookie year, and I had my daughter with me out there at training camp, and all the autographs had already gotten signed and stuff like that, and I just yelled, "Go Boston College!" And he comes running over and sees my little girl with a pink Broncos hat and takes the time and says, "Thank you guys so much for coming out. Go Broncos." Talk to her for a couple quick seconds. That's her favorite player. So I do have some bias with Justin Simmons, and then obviously getting credentialed to go out there in training camp last year and actually work and talk to Justin, man, what a great guy. To me, he embodies everything that is a Pat Bowlen Bronco. Just like Dalton Reisner, just like some of these other players that the Denver Broncos are scooping up. And these are diamonds. These are something you don't ever want to let go. These are pillars of your franchise. You hear about Bill Polian a couple of weeks ago talking to Stokely and Zach saying, look, guys, you've got to set up a foundation. Your foundation, and it's going to take time, but once you've got your foundation, you build off of that. And Justin Simmons, absolutely. The guy needs to get paid. Not only is he an elite player, but he's an elite human being. And I would encourage anybody to check out some of the work that Justin Simmons has done recently. And very impressive for the young man out of Boston College. And obviously will be a Bronco for life. I'm saying that right now. Elway said, he's going to be a Bronco. We're not letting him go. They like to wait till the last minute. Justin knows that too. So hold on, Broncos country. 31's not going anywhere. He's going to be in Denver. I feel very confident saying that.
I mean, why would you move on from him? Great season. Obviously, you know that Vic Fangio can get the most out of safeties, but Vic Simmons is a perfect fit for this defense and even better person for the community in the locker room. So,
and I'll give you a better reason. What is the biggest thing John Elway gets criticized for? Draft picks. Who drafted Justin Simmons? John Elway. So right now, the same argument is why is Garrett Bowles out there? Because John Elway drafted him in the first round. That's why he's out there. Plain and simple. Mystery. No mystery. It's that simple, dude. He is out there because he was drafted in the first round. We've got one more season of putting up with Garrett Bowles, and I think that's it. Sayonara. See you later. We're starting over. But with Justin Simmons, yeah. He's definitely going to pay him. He's a player that John Elway, Matt Russell hit out of the park. So Justin Simmons not going anywhere as a Denver Bronco.
And Terry, coming back to it, the season all depends on Locke. If you guys get a chance, go listen. Locke had a quick interview today in regards to the march that the Denver Broncos took place in. And Locke, man, I don't want to get the homer blinders on or anything like that. Obviously went down last year before the Broncos drafted him. I covered him. I actually asked him a few questions at the Missouri Pro Day. Rubbed elbows with a few scouts. Actually got to talk with a personal idol of mine in Daniel Jeremiah for a bit, which was pretty cool down at the Missouri Pro Day. Yeah.
That's wicked, man. That's, yeah. It gives me goosebumps just hearing you say that, dude, because I was at the Shrine game last year and I look behind me and there's Ozzie Newsome. Yeah. And I'm like, the guy just can't get away from football. So yeah, dude, when you say that, man, it just, and like you, man, I'm not attached to the University of Missouri at all, but watching a college football game one night of some freshman named Drew Lock and seeing the arm on this kid, I was just like, oh, I got to have it. I got to watch him. And no, man, that's awesome, dude. I love it. Please tell us a little bit more about what you saw at the Pro Day with Drew Lock. We do know that Mike Shula was there, his quarterback coach, and he seemed to speak very highly of Drew Lock. What'd you make of his Pro Day?
So obviously there is some plays here or there where Locke's base got a little bit out of whack, and that would mean the accuracy would fly. I think that was my biggest concern with him. But there was a few plays where people oohed and awed. There was a bootleg where he actually went to the left, rolling out of the pocket, and then hit it deep and probably hit 65 yards in the air with steam on it. And everybody, just a collective ooh from the crowd. So, and obviously the biggest thing with Locke, and you can see it when he talks to the media, just in general, he's the guy. He's got that energy. He's got that swagger. So obviously, like I think it was Terrell Davis said on Jim Rome this past week, where they had the leadership is obvious, et cetera, et cetera. But the biggest thing with him now is on the field. So leadership, says all the right things. The guy you want is the face of the franchise. I mean, that baby face, he's starting to get a little older. That baby face is starting to go away a little bit. So I think that's it comes down to his ability on the field. But man, I am really pulling for Drew Lock.
And Terry, I'm gonna agree with you, and I'm gonna give you a little bit of pushback too. And Terry, you know this, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it. Yet not all the pressure is on Locke. A lot of the pressure for me is on the offensive coordinator and the head coach. And you look at Vic Fangio and Pat Shurmur, right? Pat Shurmur has got to figure out a way to give the ball to these players. He's got to figure out a way to essentially score points in a rapid system where you've got a deep bench full of wide receivers. You've got tons of talent. You've got an alpha wide receiver. You've got a first-round tight end. And I think all the pressure right now is on Pat Shurmur. We've seen that the Broncos aren't afraid to get rid of an offensive coordinator after 1 year. And I'm not suggesting that by any means that we're going to see Pat Shurmur out the door. Yeah. I'm super excited to see Pat Shurmur here. But you know what, Vic? A lot of pressure's on you, Coach. Offensive coordinator Pat Shurmur, a lot of this pressure is on you. I'm looking for you guys to use your experience and mold that experience and put it together. And you've got talent. You just got to give them the reps. You got to give them the experience, and you've got to gain trust. That's one thing right now that the Broncos are trying to do. And I think today in Denver is a huge part of that. It was the first public outing you really saw as the Denver Broncos marched downtown. And I'm excited because that's the first sighting that we saw of the Broncos. And you see that they're trying to develop internal trust and internal love amongst each other.
And we got the boss man coming in here, Chad Jensen, who's the best cornerback in Broncos history, not named champ. The obvious answer is Dre Bly. Right now, actually, that's actually a shout out for Bouye because he was asking about him earlier. You guys recall Dre Bly was really hyped to be this. Oh, Champ finally has a cornerback opposite him, so they'll have to throw at Champ. And Dre Bly, really good for the Rams, was with that Dick Vermeil, greatest show on turf team, and then signed a big deal with the Lions. Never really lived up with the Broncos. Cornerbacks, when they fall off, sometimes they tend to fall off pretty darn hard. And that was the case with Bly. The name that I'm going to go with a really old school one, Louis Wright. Why not? He doesn't get enough love. I have Charlie Beagle coming in here. Obviously a great commenter often in here, but Louis Wright deserves some recognition.
Oh, man, you stole my answer. I'm not going to double up on that, but I'm going to go old school too. I'm going to go with Ray Crockett. I think he spent 7 seasons with the Denver Broncos. I believe it was somewhere around 17 interceptions, a couple touchdowns, a ton of tackles. I think he even has, 10.5 sacks. So he's a 2-time Super Bowl champ. I loved Ray Crockett. Just kind of one of those blue-collar corners. I don't think he was necessarily a Hall of Fame player by any means or anything like that, but he was instrumental in those 97, 98 teams. Steve Atwater, man, he leaned on these guys heavily. And same with Tyrone Braxton. When you really want to start looking back at old school corners. So really good question, Chad. Appreciate you chiming in. Appreciate the donation.
Jungernaught, Nick's Beer Fund. Appreciate that. If you guys have anything, we love Nick's Beer Fund, but Luke has said that maybe potentially some other options out there, maybe hashtag Nick's Cold Ones. So in the chat, obviously Nick's Beer Fund is organic. You guys came up with that. We appreciate it. But
we want to challenge you guys, our listeners of MHI and all the listeners from Mile High Huddle, building the Broncos, Dove Valley Deep Divers. We want to challenge all of our audiences for some very creative, professional, yet a little bit appropriate. They got to be appropriate so we can read them on air, folks. But we want to challenge you guys to go ahead, give us a follow. I'm at Luke Patterson LP. He's at Nicholas Kendell MHH. And Terry, you're a rock star. We really appreciate everything. Appreciate your donations. Appreciate your supports. And we are just about out of time, folks. You guys have been great. Chad's chiming in here. Louis was the original shutdown corner. So, yeah, Louis Wright, man, you stole the words right out of my mouth. Really bothered me that you answered that first because he's definitely one of my favorite players as well. Wouldn't mind getting a Louis Wright jersey, Fred.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's about it, guys. We got to get out of here. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share the show. Obviously, that helps us reach a bigger audience. And if you enjoy it, give us comments. Go to iTunes, leave a rating. We really do appreciate that. You can find Luke on Twitter at Luke Patterson LP and myself at Nick Kendell MHH. Go to milehighhuddle.com. It's an affiliate of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. And you can follow the Mile High Insiders podcast and all our other great audio content by subscribing to this wherever you listen to your shows. You can follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle. And let's pull it up here. That's the way to do it. There we go.
So it'll be, I believe it's at MHI_football pod. So that is our newest Twitter handle specifically for this show. Get on Twitter, follow that. We're going to be having merchandise come up. You don't want to miss it, folks. You're going to get some MHI swag. It's going to look really, really cool. It reps the Broncos in a very non-traditional way, where essentially we know that Broncos country is all over, but Broncos country is extremely important to Colorado. And it's one of the reasons why we have our logo the way it is. We love that mic. I love spitting in the mic, talking to Nick. Nick's one of the best insiders in terms of analysts and analysis, and Nick's no joke, folks. He's at the scouting combine. He's at these Missouri Pro Days. I'm at these Shrine Games. I'll be at the Senior Bowl. I'll be at the scouting combine next year. So when we tell you we are the Mile High Insiders, it's not that we're trying to be arrogant. It's not that we're trying to brag. We're simply trying to bring you guys in, and we want to share all the knowledge that we have with you guys because Broncos country is the most educated fan base in the NFL. So for Nick Kendell, I'm Luke Patterson saying always believe in that Mile High magic.